Test. Test 1, 2. Come on, do it. I want you to play. That we're good. It works, Kent. Okay, so just so the council knows, all of the audio is going through the live stream so that we can provide clean audio to the live stream. There's none of these speakers in this room are working, so when you speak, just talk loud. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Or start tearing the plexiglass down or something, I don't know. We're good?
No microphone? We always talk into the microphone?
Always talk into the microphone because that's what feeds it to the live stream. And the microphones are live, yeah. Yeah, yeah, please. RTS still works, yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting for April 11th to order at 12:30 p.m., 12:33. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Committee of the Whole adopt the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting April 11th as presented.
You have my motion, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Minutes to adopt. Ask for a motion from Councillor Smith that the Committee of the Whole adopt the minutes from March 14th, 2022, Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
I so move, Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. One motion just to do some housekeeping on the cancellation of the Committee of the Whole meeting on March 25th. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that Committee of the Whole formally acknowledge that the meeting on March 25th was cancelled in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw. Meeting on March 25th was cancelled in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw. Meeting on March 25th was cancelled. I'll hand it over to Chris. Cancelled in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. As we promised, we had our strategic session back in November. Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. As we promised, we had our strategic session back in November. Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. As we promised, we had our strategic session as of today in November. Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Within your agenda package that outlines what has been completed to date. And so far, since about 2014, extensive amount of work has been done, including an economic development plan, as well as a labor force business continuity study, target sector study, industrial land absorption analysis by Urban-Metrics, intermunicipal land market analysis, as well as the economic opportunity study and 5-year strategic plan that was developed. Those were all done and considered by council, and parts of them were implemented in some form or fashion. It also conveyed into an economic development officer being hired for a 3-year term starting in 2017. The economic development plan that was done in June 2014 was completed by Twist Marketing. It was kind of in direct consultation with about 140 High River residents, as well as a survey of the community and the surrounding area and the Calgary region. It developed into what the vision was for the community, what we value and the means of those values, and kind of defined who we are. Some of it is still relevant today, and I think there's some good pieces to use out of all these studies, and not worth going back, in my opinion, going back and restudying and doing some more of this work. So it's about taking the pieces and cherry picking the important parts and making sure that it's still valid today, as well as aligning with the values of our strategic plan. There's several slides on just the overall framework, and I think there's some really good information within that, and it all lines back to that health and wellness, agriculture, and quality of life within the community. And I think those are important attributes to remember as we move forward. In 2007, the intermunicipal lands market analysis was completed, or what we term as a FICA. And that was supported by 3 studies in particular, including the labor force and business composition, the target sector study, as well as the industrial land absorption analysis. And those were all done over a 3-year period and resulted in the AFICA framework. Overall, the study of that kind of FICA framework was to take a look at the two-way corridor between High River and Okotoks, and to advance kind of higher industrial uses in that area to be developed in cooperation between the three benefiting municipalities. Part of that was both a capital cost share as well as a tax sharing arrangement if that was able to be agreed upon. And it hasn't really moved much further since the start of COVID. It's been sitting in kind of hiatus for quite some time. And it's something that the county has been asking when we want to get that committee back together again and see if that's something we want to move forward with. And that'll be something that council will have to consider at a future date. After that was the final economic opportunities study done by MDB in July of 2018. It set out the strategic priorities from the plan. It looked at enhancing local capacity, hiring that economic development officer, looking at business recruitment for the downtown along 12th Avenue, enhancing quality of place and making sure that our quality of place is still at a high quality, as well as talent attraction and retention. Marketing and branding is always a slippery slope when you get into economic development. It's an endless task and it's a high cost task, to be sure. And so it's something to be considered in the future. And then industrial and commercial development, the conversation about what that looks like. And then, of course, building local and regional partnerships through the CMRB. And we're waiting on the CMRB economic development strategy that they've been working on for some time too. I think before we go too far in economic development, the philosophy that I've always had is that it's not always true economic development. That unicorn or that rainbow is not always out there. And you've got to do what's right for your community. Not always chase what the new opportunity is or what the new technology is. You got to do what's right. And when we starting to define what economic development actually means, it is generally referred to the sustained and concerted actions of policymakers and communities that promote the standard of living and economic health of a specific area. So that is different than economic growth, fundamentally different. It is development of direct policy interaction. So it's stuff like manipulating the marketplace, tax incentives, free land, those types of policy initiatives. And it aims at the economic well-being of the people. It doesn't necessarily talk about the health and well-being of the people. It's designed to increase wealth, pure and simple. It's about jobs, it's about income, it's about public goods, it's about services. It does not empower the disadvantaged is the key principle behind it. So it does not help the weakest of our society. Now, a different take on that is community economic development and what that means. And it's all things to be considered as part of the town planning process too, right? Is the action by people within a specific geographic region or community to create local economic opportunities and improve overall quality of life. It's not initiated by the public sector. It's a community-based initiative, and it's local community organizations, chambers of commerce, business improvement areas, not-for-profit groups, those types of things that initiate and drive the agenda forward. It takes on the local challenges. And takes advantage of the opportunities. A great example right now is that there's a $500,000 event grant out there, but municipalities cannot apply for it. So it's got to be not-for-profit entities that apply for it. So those types of things that are available out there through the federal government, that some opportunities we just can't apply for. It's using the local knowledge of our residents and our businesses about what they actually need. It's sitting down with the Chamber of Commerce and talking about what business supports and making sure that it's aligned. It's not so much about crafting or creating something different or what's the taste of the month that's through economic development. It's about actually listening to people and actually understanding what's going on. It's about developing new industries and new businesses and adding value. It's not about that. It's about adding value to the existing sector, strengthening our capacity. And when we strengthen our capacity and we strengthen what we have already, other things happen. It's building that foundation that's strong and consistent and resilient over time that gives us that full economic potential. And without that, without forming a good economic base, growth can't really occur. But it's also a balance about what is right growth and what is good growth, right? So we won't talk about growth today. The town, our role can be a catalyst. We can provide funding, we can provide ideas, we can provide support. we can create the environment that encourages high quality of life. So is that events programming? Is that adding more programs in downtown? Is that making it easier for sidewalk cafes and street vendors? Is that promoting more downtown events through other entities and agencies? So there's all those types of things, making it easier to go down that path than creating roadblocks. So those are the types of things that we can be as catalysts. The key one that we always come back to is that people think we have endless pockets of money, right? So they always ask for money, and sometimes that's good if it's the right investment at the right time, but sometimes we have to think about, is there a different role that we can take? When we start to defining our role, and business attraction is on council's priority list, it's on the next list about defining our role. When we start talking about that, the things to think about was, what are we trying to actually achieve? What can we do in our own control? And we talk about creating our own destiny. Do what you can control. What can the town of High River actually control that defines our role and controls our destiny? And that's like job creation. What can we do? How can we do that? And it's asking all these key questions that are on this slide. How can we improve quality of life? And it's the little things. It's the events. It's the markets. It's the night markets. It's the parades. It's the light up down in George Lane Park. It's all those things. When we start defining what our role is, it'll become clearer and clearer what we should be doing when it comes to community economic development. Now, some of the things that we do are typical economic development practices and actions. There's a long list there. Brochures and marketing is always the one that economic development officers go back to, is the marketing strategy, the marketing strategy, the marketing strategy. And I think, if you are going to go down that path, then we have to have the conversation that it's got to be consistent funding over a long period of time, and lots of funding over a long period of time. And understanding that marketing strategies change from year to year. They're not static. So if they are static, stop now. Don't do it, right? But it's about promotion. It's about education. It's about promoting what we already have and building on that. And so that's a long list of things. What could we be doing? I think there's lots of things we can be doing. I've been a fan of animating the community, right? That term, animating the community, it's about getting liveliness. We talk about vibrancy in our strategic plan. It's about getting those people on the streets. It's about the buskers on the corner. It's about the street vendors on the corner. It's about the food trucks on the CPR right of way. It's about those types of things taking place. It's about concert series. It's about speaker series. It's about sidewalk cafes and making it easier for sidewalk patios to take place. Knowing that probably the key piece that we want to make sure about on all these things is that there's always insurance in place. That's the foundational principle, right? Is making sure our risk is mitigated as best we possibly can. Beautification and community enhancement. More flowers, more color, more vibrancy, more banners, different banners throughout the community all add to that sense of feel and the sense of community pride that animates the streets. And part of it too, it goes back to the conversation of growth, and we'll get into that as part of the town plan, is when we start talking about our streets, it's about taking the streets back over for the people and making the cars a secondary use. Some people might freak out about that, but it is having that conversation, because that's where we need to reclaim some space, because we are running out of space. And when we think about running out of public space that people can actually use, what's wrong with playing street hockey on the streets, right? So it's those types of things. As far as a catalyst aspect of things, it's about running pilot projects, providing that little bit of seed money to get something off the ground, right? Somebody comes and asks for $200, that's pretty low investment if it's going to be something that somebody's thinking outside the box, right? So having those opportunities, but setting those expectations very, very clearly as a catalyst of what we expect to see happen. It also includes trail building. People love trails. They love them everywhere, right? That passive recreation is gaining more and more popularity as we go. And it's also about taking a serious look at how we can develop the CPR lands. What can we do on that land? What do we want to see done? Do we want to see it as that linear connection through the downtown core that connects to the CPR right away heading south? Can we beautify it? Can we get it, stop being the dust bowl that it is? Can we recognize the touch with the past as well? I'm not going to use historic. I'm going to use the word touch with the past, about recognizing our grain elevator history and our agricultural history, right? We can still give it some credence and some information, but it's about education and informing. So those types of things. And it's, there's the small business incubator concept, right? So some things to be thinking about was for successful in community enhancement. Be bold, be different. Don't be afraid to try things. The only way we learn that things don't work is we got to try them. And if we don't try them, we'll never learn. And we'll just stay static forever. We're going to learn. We're going to make lots of mistakes when we get into community economic development. That's okay, right? It's about how we adapt from there. Challenge the status quo. We don't have to always follow what other people do, but at the same time, there are some good ideas out there that we can borrow from. And we can learn from their mistakes to make them better. So those types of things. Focus on what we can actually change. Don't focus on chasing that unicorn. I use that word a lot. Chasing that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Because rarely is it there. And when you take a look at economic development in the United States, where they use a lot of incentives to get businesses there, you can point to lots of areas of the United States where they get those businesses there for a 5-year term because it's 5 years tax-free, or the land was free, and in 5 years that business is moving on somewhere else because they got another deal for 5 years tax-free. So, that in Canada, that just is not a great policy from that perspective. And do the small things and build on those successes. We've got all sorts of things that we're successful with, so let's capitalize them. Let's take those and spin them off, make them a little bit bigger, and go from there. And then fundamentally, do what's right. Do what feels right, right? If it doesn't feel right, then it's not a good choice for this community. And you guys as elected officials have to have that gut feeling what's right and what's wrong. So if it's a giant motorcycle rally for the Hells Angels in the middle of downtown, maybe that's not right. Don't know, right? Might be exciting, might be different, but it might not be the right choice. So those types of things. And, for the new members of council, I know you're getting lots of phone calls. Don't fall into catering for user groups. They're taking advantage of the conversations they've had with previous members of council and now going to the new members of council and seeing if they can get some leverage. And so it's always be careful about those user groups because there's always a hidden agenda to an extent. Some are there for good purposes. Some are there for self-serving purposes, and be very careful from that perspective. But it's always good. Be united, be strong, stay the course. Consistent direction wins out over change of direction over and over and over again. Stay true to those values, those core values of the strategic plan. And so that's kind of the key premise. And big part about it, have fun with community economic development. It's meant to be fun, right? It's about that sense of fun, that sense of cool, that sense of doing things that are right for the community and that quality of life. So those are kind of the tidbits that I'll provide you from my experience of community economic development as weighted versus economic development and what those definitions are. So before I move on to wayfinding update, any questions?
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I noticed there's comments about Afika in your report here. Has there been any requests by the county or any discussion with the county with respect to Afika, or is it sort of...
It's still in hiatus. They brought it up about a year ago, trying to get the committee back together, and that meeting fell through, and since then it hasn't been talked about.
Thank you.
Any more questions? And then the signage. We're in tender process right now. We hope to have it closed by the end of April. It's going to be a tricky project. We're looking at a unit cost kind of contract with this one so that we can pick and choose which signs get moving forward. We only have about $380,000 to spend. The slate of signs that are in this presentation and on this map probably are in the range of about $600,000 range. If we do all of them, maybe we'll get lucky. It is a hybrid process. This is a wood grain lookalike on an aluminum structure, so it's very low maintenance. The blades that you see are interchangeable, so we can change them and deal with them. They're also linked to wayfinding from a special color on a map aspect of things too, so you can pick out that color and different accessibility features within that wayfinding program. You're seeing both main directional signage that will be used for vehicles and pedestrians is the first slide that you see, and then there'll be the post signage. I term it the MASH signage, right? Remember the show MASH? The MASH signage that is a little bit more pedestrian friendly, that's got some mapping on it and tells a little bit of a story, and we can use for interpretation from that perspective. So, though that's what's the update. Council requested as part of the strategic planning update. Sorry it took so long to get it to this meeting, but we've had several full agendas, so we kept pushing this one there. So, any questions, comments, or concerns?
Councillor Nychuk?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. That 380,000 that you mentioned, that's still funding that we had previously. We've just been able to carry that forward with the government. That was part of that whole economic development package from way back.
That's correct. There's a part that's MSI, about $40,000, and the rest, $340,000, is from recovery funding.
And what's the timeline on that now?
December
It's
31st,
been-
December 31st, 2022, we have to have that used up.
And I'm sure that's going to be it.
That is it.
I would say
There is no
there's-
moving that.
There's no moving that.
There is no moving that
So
bar.
we're all over this then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it'll be a little bit of a panic through the summer months when we're doing the construction, but we're pretty confident we'll get it done.
So Chris, you said to do all of this is in the 600K range. We only have 380. So what areas are proposed to be focused on?
We're going to focus on the corridor, the main corridor coming down Center Street, and then the important attributes that come into downtown. So when you take a look at those corridors, we're going to take a look at the Center Street corridor, try and get as much of that completed as possible, and then Third Avenue coming into downtown from the lights, and then we'll spur off of that what we can afford, and maybe one additional sign here, one additional sign there, kind of thing. But that would be the focus, and we focus on downtown because we felt that this was the most achievable plan compared to trying to deal with larger scale signs on the gateway side of things. So the gateway signs would be the ones on the north, east, and south side of the communities that are much larger in scale. So we felt that this was more achievable to have a bigger impact and to build some momentum on. Does that answer your question, Mayor Snodgrass?
Yeah, I'm debating whether I like it or not. So I'll move on for more discussion. Councillor Nychuk and then Councillor Barton.
Is that debate in your head going on okay? Or
No, it's not. It never does. It's chaos.
with this is a piece of the total thing would cost about 600K. Is that what we're this RFP that's going out? Are we quoting for the entire package? 'Cause I'd like it to come back to council and discuss getting it all done in full boat. We've had some things that have moved. Hey, like I know it's different pocket of funding,
Yeah.
but the RCMP build out, their renovation is significantly different than we budgeted for, and you're very good financially, Chris. So if we could get this signage thing done and put to bed, I'd like us to go after that tact. I mean, obviously, there's 6 other people here
Yeah.
that have an opinion, but I sure would like to have a look at it to bite it and chew it all in one go.
We'll bring it back. It has to come back for award. And we'll also come back with a recommendation. This is just phase 1, right? I want to be clear. This is just one phase of it, because there's also the gateway signage, and then taking this wayfinding component and spinning it out from this core area. So it's taking it down Happy Trails, taking it to other parts of the community, taking it all the way down 12th Avenue. So it's just one phase of it. And so if we can do it, the true pricing only happens when we get tender in. Right? So estimates are as good as estimates can be, and until we get that tender pricing in, and if it's competitive, we may be able to do much more than what we anticipate.
Thanks, Chris.
Councillor Barton?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, so does this wayfinding project tie in with the current, I guess, wayfinding signage that we have, for example, out by the North Tim Hortons that's in the ditch?
The overall in the ditches, right? That over plan would be to see that stuff removed over time. So this would be replacing all the wayfinding that we have, all the gateway signage that we have in the community right now, including the stuff at the agricultural lands, and renewing that into this kind of theme and framework.
Thank you.
That made the conversation in my head a lot easier. I appreciate that, Councillor Nychuk, so. And like you say, until it goes to tender, I'm with Michael where I'd like to just, we've got surplus monies, et cetera, that we could use to get this chunk done, because that is a huge start to just trying to figure out what goes where and how to do it, when the whole thing has been designed to incorporate together. It's going to be difficult to try to figure out what goes where and what doesn't, right? So this has been thought out very, very well for a very, very long time. So I'd like to be able to find the money to just do this piece. And then we'll work at getting the stuff out of the ditch.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass.
Well done. Thanks, Chris. Next, we have Nancy with the BSRC 10-year capital plan. Did it?
Good afternoon, thank you. At the request of Council, Administration has prepared a 10-year capital plan for spending at the BSRC. In addition, the current operating budget includes a set amount of $105,000 annually to take care of minor maintenance and repairs and replacement in the facility. So that's outside of what I've provided you here today. The projects identified on this plan are intended to maximize the life expectancy of the building by investing in a planned approach for asset and building maintenance. The projects identified are to preserve the building with the intent of similar use and usership and do not include non-critical items or items for the purpose of expansion. For example, projects to improve the building's inclusiveness have not been included in this schedule of projects. While it would be required for any modern building, and despite there being a demonstrated need from the community, this has not been included as the scope of such a project is not well understood and is not critical to the current base operations. The projects identified are known upcoming expenses for necessary maintenance based on the summary of reports that was provided to Council a few weeks ago to extend the life cycle of the building. Due to the age and condition of the building, unanticipated projects are likely. The 10-year outlook is intentionally heavy in the early years. This is to provide immediate attention to areas that are past life expectancy. It should also be noted that the front-loaded projects such as the slab replacements and roof repairs are expected to extend the life expectancy of the building by 30-plus years. As we address overdue maintenance issues and implement an asset management system, it is expected that capital requests will decrease and new projects will be minimized in occurrence, value, and scope. In addition, there may be specific community or user groups requests that are not included. Examples of this would include a dedicated dressing room for the Flyers or an elevator for the curling lounge. Special interest groups would be required to seek approval for improvement funds from Council separately and outside and above this list. This report is not seeking approval for identified funds. The desired outcome of this exercise is to provide Council with long-term planning information to enable informed decision-making. Administration will follow the established process for seeking approval and funds prior to proceeding with any projects above the operating budget. Ultimately, administration is seeking Council direction with regard to service levels, hours of operation provided by the facility, and seeking to understand Council's philosophy on rate recovery versus social benefit.
Questions from Council? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Just curious about, has the process ever been undertaken to look at rate recovery versus social benefit? In our instance, have we undertaken this exercise?
Not yet. No, we have not.
No? Is it something that we would be well, I guess, tasked to do?
Nancy can back me up on this, but there's, we alluded to that a bit last time we presented in terms of what does our rate recovery actually look like currently? So when we were looking at the financials last time, we did talk a bit about benchmarking, and I think to fully understand that we need a bit more about benchmarking, a bit more on how do you measure that social benefit, and then go from there. And to be honest, I'm not even sure how we would approach that at this point. We need a lot more conversation. We think it's important, we just don't quite know how to present or quantify that at this point.
Okay, would we be, I guess, are there other resources available to us to explore this?
Yeah.
We would likely need to seek a consultant for assistance on this.
Okay. And other municipalities maybe who have undertaken this exercise recently? Potentially?
We're not aware of anyone who's undergone something like this. When we look at our comparables, also what we understand is someone that's a direct comparable on our size and offering hasn't gone through an exercise like this.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Nychuk? Nope.
Thanks, yeah. Councillor Smith kind of covered a lot there, but just to go down that same vein some more, I guess. You're sitting on that side of the table asking us our opinion, managing the facility. Where does your expertise, knowledge, your gut take you in terms of social responsibility versus cost recovery? I mean, you guys always ask that of us, but I'm not the resident expert in this. I want to know from the management side of it, because you're looking after that facility for us. Where does that lie with you? Is that a fair question to ask? We want to do the best for the community that we can, but there's a financial balance that's there. We'd like to give everything to everybody, but don't go too far down the black hole. I just wanted to get a taste of where you might sit with that.
It is, you're right, it is a bit of a black hole. We could go down that one quite a ways. And it would be very interesting to do. I think the struggle is this is a subsidized service, and really the question is how much do you want to subsidize it and what the benefit is, and how do you maximize your cost recovery? And we don't have an answer for that. I mean, you want to push that recovery as far as you can without having impact. But at a certain point, you're going to push too far. You're going to start losing rates and you're going to start losing usership. And on the flip side, you do want to encourage that usership, not just for rate recovery, but for that social well-being and for the community. Do you want this as a kind of a community hub where lots of people hang out? And do you design programming around that to encourage that and adjust your rates accordingly? So it's hard to go there until we understand kind of what everyone expects out of it. Like if the expectation is to maximize rate recovery, then we can do that.
That kind of hit it right there though, Riley, saying that you have to recognize what the community is looking for. And we get snippets, right? Some of us go there, some of us don't, some of us use it a whole lot, some of us use it very little. So we rely on you guys to tell us what those user groups are, besides everybody that is in our ear about our group is growing and our group needs this and our group needs that. Everybody always wants needs, but we have to make decisions on where the greatest need is. So some of that is understanding where those needs are and how we develop the best programs based on those needs, in my belief, knowing that some are going to lose. Some groups will. That's the decisions we have to make. We make some darn hard decisions here. And it would nice to be all inclusive to all people, but I also want to understand that the people that are running this, in case you guys, in this case, you guys sitting right there, that the financial control and responsibility that you have comes in that decision making by looking at those prominent groups, and we're not talking about just the highest level, right? There's going to be smaller user groups that we accommodate and carry forward, but that's what I'm looking for, is understanding which of those groups are predominant and which ones are the ones that are, we had a counselor bring forward lacrosse, that they're really growing. That came in the form of an email. So I look at it and go, okay, is lacrosse growing? Isn't lacrosse growing? That needs to come from the people knocking on your door and understanding what they're asking for and how much. And so, thanks. Sorry to give you a really
Well, I can make it
broad question
even
and try
more
to
muddy too.
understand, you know, for-
I'll make it a little bit more muddy. And just to add, we've started the open houses. And so that process, we're hoping to hear more from the community and those user groups in terms of what are needs. And in terms of the rate recovery and the user groups too, we can look at that two ways. And Nancy and I have debated this a number of times in terms of what's the right way to go. If you are trying to maximize rate recovery, you would go to the users who use the facility the most and to the best utilization. So you would go, lacrosse and pickleball, because they have a lot of users. They come through. But is our purpose to serve a broader demographic? In which case, we need to make spots and make allowances for the user groups that have less users. So, is that volleyball or badminton, and making sure there's a slot that all sports have an opportunity to do their thing, whether or demographic. And so that's that's where we struggle in terms of where's the direction, or what is it we're trying to achieve? Are we trying to give everyone an opportunity, or are we going strictly maximize the dollars? An example is, we have basketball has absolutely exploded of late, yet they're not really at the user table, not well represented. And so we've been trying to open up more slots because it's well utilized. And that's something we want to cater to, because we are seeing the usership there, and it is a younger demographic that we want to help. And so it's hard to manage.
Well, clearly, it's hard to manage from this side of the table too. It's I think it's, for us, it's an administration. It's making the community aware of really what the cost is to do this, right? We can do everything for everybody if the community is willing to pay for it, right? If you want your taxes increased 100%, hey, we'll be the sporting capital of Canada.
We'd be
Do everything
happy
you
to
want.
oblige.
We'll build a $150 million facility, but to be blunt, we're going to tax the hell out of you to do it, because that's where the money has to come from.
Yes.
So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So for me, recreation, there's two components to this. There's the operating costs, which we're 65% recovery, and what you've presented. Sorry, Riley?
Nancy can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the other way around. It's 65% subsidized.
65% subsidized, pardon me. So that's one part of the recreation. What you've presented today is essentially a capital budget, which is totally separate from operations. I see the number about 7 million over 3 years. And the biggest number of that is 2.5 million on the, I know you're dying, I'll stop here in a minute. And about 2.5 is on the slab for the large surface. I have a tough time visualizing High River without having a hockey rink. I really do. And I hope Chris and this team can put something together that will be able to find the money to redo that surface, because I know it has to be done. Just some comments. Thanks.
Councillor Jones?
Sorry.
Riley?
Just to clarify a little bit on the subsidy piece there, this, traditionally, this money would be included in that 65%. So the way the budget was reflected before, so we're not saying the subsidy plus this money on top of it, that the way that the budget was rolled up previously, this is the capital portion of that. So it's not on top of.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I do see that this reflects the money to be spent on keeping the facility open, but the discussion went to the user groups and does the facility meet the needs of our community? So if if we have a huge need and it's not meeting those needs and we have to make those cuts, recovery versus social aspects, like maybe that's a discussion too, right? If we have user groups who want to use it and can't, and we have user groups who, want to put in the money to use it, which is what we need to run it, and can't, I think that's a bigger conversation maybe than, I don't know. As we've talked about, looking at another facility down the future. So, my thoughts.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit to that conversation too. And I think recreation, there's recreation, the service, and it's a much bigger topic, right? And that social well-being aspect of things. And then there's recreation, the facilities. They go hand in hand, and their userships are really important. And I think in this community is, the conversation that has led to this point is the renewal of Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex versus building something new. And that's what we're trying to feed council the information on all aspects of things so that we can get some really firm direction by early this summer so that we can start the process of either going down the path of adding value to the existing facility by not just doing the general maintenance, but adding components to it. And understanding what the needs are within the community. And if that's an aquatic expansion, then that's the conversation again with the community about aquatic expansion. If it's gymnasium expansion, then it's a conversation about gymnasium expansion. But then we can have that direction. Or is it a much longer term goal to take a look at, you heard Nancy say that this plan will renew this facility for over 30 years. That's it's not a long time. That goes by like that, right? But it does give us time. It gives us time to plan properly, to look to the future, see where this community is actually growing, and see if there is a parcel of land that we need to be securing in the future. Now, at the end of the day, fiscally responsibility is a key component. And looking at reinvestment in existing facilities is always better, and people will disagree, but always better than building brand new. Because at the end of the day, too, you've got to renew that brand new facility, too, over the next 50 years. So you've got to also plan for that. So those are some difficult conversations and difficult decisions council has to have to give us direction so that we can move forward with a plan that council's happy with, that gives us direction, sets the certainty moving forward as it relates to recreation. The conversation about subsidy of operation, I think that's a good conversation, whether we subsidize 65% or 75% or try and get it to 50-50. Giving us a target to work in that direction, that helps us too. But the renewal of the facility is really the priority that council's trying to address right now, whether we renew it or whether we say, no, we're going to stop renewing it and we're going to look at building something new. Timeline, building something new is much longer than renewing an existing facility. Right? So I just want to make sure that council's aware of that conversation where we're trying to address we're getting into lots of different tantalizing pieces of recreation, right? User group conversation. And I want to keep council focused on the priority about what's the direction on Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex. Is it renovating the existing and adding value to it? Or is it looking for another site and building another hundreds of millions of dollar new site for the community? And what's the plan moving forward for that, knowing that it's probably going to be, and I think Councillor Barton asked this question when we first had the conversation about the target population foreseen in a facility of that nature is probably around 35,000 permanent population. We're a long ways from that. And so got to think about those things. And we got to be careful about tax burdens on everybody too. So anyways, good conversation. Thank you.
Well, I would love to go down the road of doing a study of some kind on what cost recovery looks like on our rec center. For a number of reasons. Number one, we can show it to all the user groups as to what your rate would be if there wasn't a 65% subsidy. Because if you remember, can't remember how many years ago it was, 3-4 years ago, and we did a rate increase to our user groups, and it was tens of dollars. And it went apeshit as to how dare we. So I'd love to do the studies. Get an outside consultant. Don't do it internally because nobody will trust it. So get somebody to come in. I don't know when we would do that because I think I agree with Chris. We have to focus on what we're doing right now for the future of this stuff. But what the actual user groups would have to pay to operate that facility in a full cost recovery model, lock the doors. They won't. Nobody will pay it. But it would be fantastic information to have because we obviously don't. So, Riley, you're hovering on your button. That's the problem with these in-person meetings now, right? I can see when people are. Go ahead. We good?
I think to add to what everybody's saying, I think it'd be really interesting to find out what our current, I guess, user group demographics would be, so that it could be a piece that kind of rolls forward year to year. Because I honestly, until Nancy had mentioned it to me in that email, I would never have guessed basketball was growing as much as it is. Right? I'm involved in a different side of things. Hockey and stuff, so basketball wasn't a piece, but
Well, and that's the thing about that facility, that certain groups are organized and know how to get to council and will get to council, and they will send emails and they will pound the table. But we may have a user group that's very quiet on that end and not as organized, but is a larger user of that field house. And we shut it all down for the one that's banging the table right now. I don't know that that's fair, right? So that's the challenge that Nancy and Riley face every single day. We good? You got your mic on.
Yeah, just one last comment. This is building towards more information to council. There'll be one more report talking about the feasibility of a new facility somewhere in town. We'll do our best without consultant help to lay out a pro forma for council to take a look at. What that scenario looks like, what the process would look like, what the timeline would look like. And for then that will help council be that feasibility kind of process. That'll help build council or provide council with the needed information to finalize their decision, and give us that direction. And don't shoot the messenger, but they will be scary numbers, right? They'll be really scary numbers, and they will not be based upon outside grants or outside partnerships. That just lengthens the process. And if we rely on grants for too much longer, we're going to be waiting a really long time. So we'll build that scenario. We'll build a feasibility kind of cost pro forma for council, of what a ballpark facility, of what we have today on a new site in town, servicing land cost and building exactly what we have, maybe with a little bit of an expansion to it, but not much more. So that's kind of what we'll bring forward to council, probably later part of May.
Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. And then, as part of what you're going to bring back to us, Chris, are you going to bring back a sort of a plan on?
Yeah, I think, slab replacement, you can always squeeze extra life out of an asset. There will be a breaking point where it doesn't function, and we'll have to figure out what that breaking point is. Is that 3 years from now? Is that 2 years from now? Is that 5 years from now? But we do know that we're beyond the life cycle of it. I think we will build a funding strategy for this capital plan so that you guys will see that. That's got to be part and parcel of the package. And when you take the slabs away from here, the slab replacement, which is a once in 50-year kind of replacement, is a quarter of the overall capital plan to keep this in life for 30 years or more. And when we start doing proper maintenance, we're going to get a lot more life out of it. So I think we'll bring that package forward of how to fund this too, as a strategy. And like I say, don't shoot the messenger, because we can make mistakes along the way too, and we'll learn from those. But we'll make some certain assumptions when it comes to the feasibility analysis of a new facility, so that the assumptions are very well laid out, and that council buys into those assumptions as well. So,
Councillor Nychuk?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Back to that feasibility, Chris, that'll be capital cost and going forward operational costs?
we will do our
Two
best
pieces?
to project the operational
Yeah,
costs.
yeah, I'm not looking for anything,
Yeah.
definitive, just a loose, hey,
Yeah.
it costs this to build it, and it costs this to run it.
Yeah.
That's a big piece, obviously. Thank you.
Okay, wide open. Thanks very much, Nancy. Well done. Thanks, Riley. Wide open Q&A if there's anything from council. See none, hear none. Committee of the whole adjourned at 1:23 PM.